You ever have that moment when you realize the dream you've been chasing for decades comes with strings you never saw before? That was me the day we moved into Cedar Hills. My name's Jack Miller. I'm a 62-year-old retired contractor, widower, and grandfather of two. After 40 years of hard work, swinging hammers, running job sites, and eventually my own small remodeling company, I finally decided to retire. My wife and I had always dreamed of buying a place in a quiet neighborhood. Someplace with tree-lined streets, tidy sidewalks, and that picture-perfect suburban calm you only see in magazines. Life didn't work out the way we planned. My wife passed from cancer 5 years ago, and I spent the years after buried in work just to avoid the silence of an empty house. But when I finally sold my business, I thought, why not make a fresh start? I wanted something peaceful, something new. Cedar Hills seemed perfect. The brochures promised a tight-knit community, beautifully maintained homes, and amenities that protect your property values. It was run by an HOA, but I figured, no problem. I'd worked with building codes and inspectors my whole life. Rules didn't scare me. Rules meant order. And when I found the house, a sturdy little 2-story with a wraparound porch and a bright blue paint job, I knew it was the one. My wife would have loved the blue. It felt alive, hopeful. I signed the papers, moved in, and thought I'd finally bought myself a little peace. I couldn't have been more wrong. 2 weeks after moving in, I got the letter. The envelope looked official, with Cedar Hills Homeowners Association printed across the top. Inside was a crisp, businesslike notice. Dear Mr. Miller, your property is in violation of the community's approved color scheme guidelines. The exterior paint color, blue, is not within the HOA's approved palette. To maintain community harmony, you are required to repaint your home within 30 days. Approved colors include beige, taupe, sand, cream, and light brown. Failure to comply will result in fines of $200 per week until corrected. I remember staring at that letter, mouth open, like they just told me my dog had to wear pants to walk on the sidewalk. Beige. They wanted me to paint over my bright, welcoming, cheerful blue house with beige. I laughed at first, thinking it was some mix-up. Surely they wouldn't make me repaint an entire house just because they didn't like the color. But when I called the HOA office, I was put on hold for 20 minutes before a sharp-voiced woman answered. "This is Linda, president of Cedar Hills HOA," she said, like she was announcing royalty. I explained the situation. She cut me off. "Yes, Mr. Miller. Your house violates Section 14.2 of our covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Only earth tone neutrals are allowed. Blue is not on the list. You'll need to comply within 30 days. I tried reason. "Ma'am, the house was blue when I bought it. The realtor never said anything." "That's not our problem," she said flatly. "The rules are clear. You should have read the bylaws before purchasing. If you don't comply, fines will begin immediately. And if fines go unpaid, we place a lien on your property." "A lien? Over paint color?" That's when the first ember of anger caught fire in me. I dealt with plenty of inspectors, permit officers, and city clerks in my life. But never had I heard someone speak with such smug satisfaction, like she enjoyed holding that kind of power over people. Still, I told myself not to make waves. Maybe I could negotiate. Maybe I could appeal. That weekend, I walked the neighborhood with my grandson, pointing out houses. Beige, 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 beige. Every single one looked identical, like someone had taken a cookie cutter and stamped the whole subdivision out of sand-colored dough. "Grandpa, your house is the only one that looks happy," my grandson said, and my chest swelled a little. Because he was right. But that only made me realize I was a target. My house stood out, and people like Linda hated that. I wasn't the only one she was after. Over the next few weeks, I started hearing whispers from neighbors. The Johnsons down the street got fined for having a red mulch bed instead of brown. The Sanchez family was told to remove their basketball hoop. An elderly widow, Mrs. Parker, was cited for unapproved garden ornaments. The wind chimes her late husband had made by hand. It was always Linda leading the charge. She strutted around the neighborhood in her sun hat and oversized sunglasses, clipboard in hand, writing up violations like she was sheriff of the Wild West. The real kicker? Linda lived in the biggest house in Cedar Hills, a faux mansion at the end of the cul-de-sac. Marble columns, imported stone driveway, sprawling lawn. She bragged constantly about how her house was the pride of Cedar Hills. I swallowed my pride at first. I thought, fine, let me get an estimate. Maybe I'll just repaint. But when the contractor told me it cost nearly $9,000 to cover my blue with multiple coats of beige, my stomach sank. $9,000 just to satisfy Linda's beige obsession. That's when I started asking questions. Who exactly gave Linda the power to run this place like her personal kingdom? Where were the checks and balances? And most importantly, what would happen if someone finally pushed back? Because if there's one thing I've learned in life, it's this. People who hide behind clipboards and rules usually have something they don't want you to see. And I was about to find out exactly what Linda was hiding. I thought maybe I could reason with the rest of the HOA board. Surely, Linda wasn't the only voice. Surely the board had some compassion. I was wrong. At the next HOA meeting, I stood in front of the board, a group of 5 people sitting behind a long folding table like judges at some cheap talent show. Linda sat in the center, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. I made my case. The house was blue when I bought it. I had no prior notice. Repainting would cost thousands. I even pointed out that a splash of color could actually increase curb appeal, breaking up the endless sea of beige. When I finished, Linda didn't even hesitate. Mr. Miller, the rules exist for a reason. If we let you keep your house blue, what's next? Purple? Polka dots? No, we must uphold standards. The rest of the board nodded like bobbleheads. I left that meeting boiling. Within a week, the fines started. $200 a week. Then $400. Then $600. Letters came with bold red warnings. Neighbors started avoiding me. Some whispered encouragement. Hang in there, Jack. We're rooting for you. But no one wanted to cross Linda publicly. She had a way of making life miserable for anyone who defied her. Meanwhile, I noticed something strange. For all Linda's obsession with rules, her own property wasn't exactly pristine. A section of her roof looked dark, almost stained. Her gutters overflowed during rain. And once, when the wind shifted just right, I caught a whiff of something foul drifting from her backyard, like damp rot. Curiosity nagged at me. One night, I did a little digging online. Public records, property assessments, permits. And what I found was interesting. Linda's mansion hadn't passed a county inspection in nearly a decade. There were notes about unresolved moisture issues. Moisture issues. My contractor brain perked up. That usually meant one thing: mold. And if that was true, Linda's perfect pride of Cedar Hills mansion might be rotting from the inside out. The hypocrisy was staggering. She was fining me for paint while living in a potential biohazard. But proof, that was the key. And I knew exactly how to get it. By now, my fines had climbed to nearly 2-0. I was getting daily letters threatening legal action. I couldn't keep paying. So I called in a favor. An old buddy of mine, Tom, worked as a building inspector for the county. We'd gone fishing together for years. I invited him over for coffee and casually mentioned my concerns about a certain oversized house on the cul-de-sac. Tom raised an eyebrow. You're saying moisture problems? I'm saying black streaks on the roof, clogged gutters, musty smell, no inspection in 10 years. That's what I'm saying. He whistled low. If that's true, and there's mold growth inside, that's a health code violation. 2 weeks later, I got a call. Jack, Tom said, chuckling. You're not going to believe this. That house? Condemned. We found severe black mold in the basement, spreading into the walls. Entire structure is unsafe for habitation until remediation. Linda's been ordered out. I nearly dropped the phone. The Queen of Beige, the tyrant of Cedar Hills, the woman who fined widows for wind chimes, her precious mansion had been condemned. Word spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. For the first time, people laughed at Linda instead of fearing her. Kids rode their bikes past her house chanting, Mold mansion. Mold mansion. And me? I suddenly had leverage. At the next HOA meeting, I stood tall. If we're all about upholding standards, shouldn't the board fine its own president for living in a hazardous property? Or is this just about squeezing money from retirees and widows? The room erupted. Neighbors cheered. Linda went red as a tomato. For the first time, the board wavered. The county's condemnation notice forced Linda out of her house. She tried to spin it, claiming it was just a minor renovation, but everyone knew the truth. Meanwhile, I started organizing. Quietly at first, coffee meetings with neighbors, little chats on front porches. People were tired of Linda's reign of terror. We drafted a petition to remove her as HOA president. When we unveiled it at the next meeting, we had over 60 signatures. Linda screeched, "This is a witch hunt!" But the bylaws were clear. With a 2/3 majority, the board could vote her out. And that's exactly what happened. Linda stormed out, swearing she'd sue every one of us. She never did. With her gone, the board rolled back dozens of petty restrictions. Mrs. Parker got to keep her wind chimes. The Johnsons kept their mulch. Kids could play basketball in their own driveways again. And me? My house stayed blue. In fact, they amended the bylaws to allow a limited range of tasteful accent colors. Inspired by, you guessed it, my blue house. Life in Cedar Hills changed after that. People smiled more. Neighbors gathered on porches again. The fear was gone. As for Linda, last I heard she sold her condemned mansion for a fraction of its value, moving out of state in disgrace. I sat on my porch one evening, watching the sunset reflect off the bright blue siding of my house. My grandson sat beside me, sipping lemonade. "Grandpa," he said, "your house is still the happiest one." And I smiled, because he was right. Sometimes, revenge doesn't come with fireworks or grand speeches. Sometimes, it's as simple as standing your ground, waiting for truth to catch up with hypocrisy. Linda wanted me to paint my house beige. Instead, her own house crumbled under mold. And every time I look at these blue walls, I remember. Sometimes the best justice is letting bullies undo themselves. If you've ever been bullied by an HOA, or felt powerless against someone hiding behind rules, remember this. Stand your ground, do your homework, and never underestimate the power of truth. Because in the end, beige may fade, but justice shines bright blue.